Severus Snape is the first to arrive at Godric's Hollow, before Hagrid, before Dumbledore, before anyone can decide what happens to the boy. He ascends the ruined staircase, ignoring James Potter's body discarded like broken furniture in the hallway. Stepping into the nursery, his singular, desperate hope violently shatters. He drops heavily to his knees, pulling Lily's cooling body into his trembling arms. A silent wail tears through his chest. He rocks back and forth on the ruined floorboards, burying his face in her dark red hair as the nursery slowly burns around them. The ragged weeping of an infant eventually forces its way through his despair. Snape looks up, finally acknowledging the child standing in the splintered cot. Seeing the fresh, bleeding cursed scar on the infant's forehead, a violent hatred for the Dark Lord rises in his chest. He resents the child for surviving when she did not. But as the boy looks back at him through the heavy smoke, Snape freezes. Set within the infant's terrified face are Lily's exact piercing green eyes. In that instant, the rage cools into absolute resolve. Snape reaches into the crib, wrapping the boy tightly in his own dark cloak to shield him from the smoking ruins. Stealing the only remaining piece of Lily Potter for himself, he turns on his heel and disapparates into the freezing night, leaving nothing but an empty cot waiting for the headmaster. Severus Snape materialises outside his childhood home at Spinner's End, with the infant pressed to his chest, only to find Albus Dumbledore waiting in the shadows of his sitting room. The headmaster offers no greeting before insisting the boy must go to his maternal aunt to secure sacrificial blood protection. Snape rejects the mandate, arguing that the Dark Lord was eradicated in the nursery. Dumbledore counters with terrifying calm. Lord Voldemort is merely fractured, not dead, and will eventually return. Hearing the promise of the Dark Lord's resurrection, Snape's grief pivots to military strategy. He realises that if Voldemort is destined to return, he and the boy must spend the intervening years preparing for war. He begins to view the sleeping infant not merely as a stolen legacy, but as a living instrument for revenge. Refusing to surrender the child to a Muggle household, Snape insists he can construct a far superior defence. To sever Dumbledore's doubts, he draws his wand. A silver dough erupts from the tip, illuminating the dreary sitting room. Bathed in the light of the Patronus, Snape silently swears an oath upon his love for Lily Potter to protect her son against the returning darkness at any cost. Dumbledore studies the younger man, quietly recognising an exploitable advantage in Snape's guilt. Dumbledore accepts the arrangement. Following Dumbledore's departure, Snape secures the infant in an isolated house far from the magical world. The earliest years of Harry's life are defined by a relentless routine. Long before the boy learns to read, he is taught the precision of ingredient preparation and strictly disciplined against any accidental displays of childhood magic. He grows up perfectly safe and rigorously educated, realizing early on that his survival depends entirely on absolute obedience. This conditioning crystallizes at age 7 during Harry's first formal legitimacy exercises. When a flicker of exhaustion causes his mental focus to slip, Snape offers no comfort. He simply resets the mental intrusion, silently demanding the boy try again until the emotion is suppressed. Harry quickly learns to bury his vulnerability behind a blank expression. He formally addresses his guardian strictly as Professor. The profound isolation of the house breaks only once Rubeus Hagrid unexpectedly arrives, carrying a leather-bound photo album of the Potter family. Hagrid attempts to present the gift, but Snape immediately intervenes, enforcing his mandate against unnecessary attachments. However, as the potions master turns to lock the album away, Harry makes a calculated choice. Utilising some sleight of hand, the boy actively slips a single loose photograph of his mother into his sleeve. He forces himself to construct ironclad occlumency shields every night, just to hide this one rebellious attachment. As Harry enters Hogwarts and the ancient sorting hat touches his head, it immediately pauses, noting the artificial nature of his internal walls. Harry offers no debate, internally issuing a single command to place him where he belongs. The hat bellows Slytherin, and the Great Hall falls silent as Harry walks towards the green and silver table with a blank expression. Over the following weeks, Harry executes his academic duties with mechanical precision. In potions, he provides complex answers before Snape can finish the prompts. In charms, he answers theoretical queries intent for 7th year students. Faculty members exchange unsettled glances at his unnatural proficiency. When Professor McGonagall holds him back to question where an 11-year-old acquired such advanced instruction, Harry simply states he was educated at home and leaves. The first anomaly in Harry's routine occurs in the library. Hermione Granger sits down uninvited and reaches across the desk to correct a subtle error in his parchment notes. Harry freezes, fixing her with an intense stare. Unfazed, Hermione reveals she has already studied the same advanced material. Harry realises he is sitting across from someone who operates at his intellectual speed. Hermione acknowledges the castle rumours calling the new Slytherin strange, to which Harry accedes with flat indifference. When she notes that she is considered odd as well and offers a small smile, Harry does not smile back. Yet, despite his strict training against unnecessary attachments, he does not pack up his notes or walk away. High in his dungeon office, Severus Snape reviews Harry's flawless first-term reports. Confident the weapon he forged is operating exactly as designed. He files the parchment away, unaware that the girl missing from the official record represents a subtle, irreversible crack forming in his perfect creation. Harry measures every person in his orbit strictly through the lens of utility. In the library late at night, Hermione Granger becomes the first student to clear that threshold. Researching advanced charm theory, they quietly compare their parchment notes. Examining her calculations, Harry registers that she has identified a flaw in a magical vector he overlooked. He performs a silent recalibration, recognizing he has met an intellectual peer. Hermione reads the boy as brilliant and deeply unsettling, drawn to his mind even as her instincts warn her to stay away. The first structural flaw in Harry's conditioning emerges shortly after, when an older Slytherin student corners Hermione in a stone corridor, targeting her Muggle-born heritage. Harry steps between them with the efficient annoyance of someone correcting a disturbance. When the boy angrily draws his wand, the duel lasts precisely 11 seconds. Harry disarms the older boy with a non-verbal Expelliarmus, followed with a Petrificus Totalis before the boy can complete an incantation. As the student crashes to the stone floor, Harry walks away before Hermione can offer a word of thanks. Unaware it is Lily Potter's blood bleeding past his ironclad training. From the shadows, Severus Snape observes the confrontation. He watches the boy he forged neutralize an older pureblood to protect Lily's quiet legacy in another gifted Muggle-born girl. His lips curl into a hint of a smile. In Year 3, and with the escape of Sirius Black, Harry notes Fred and George Weasley moving through forgotten corridors with precise timing. He challenges them to a 24-hour game of evasion. If they find him, he will help them execute a prank on Draco Malfoy. If they fail, they must surrender their secret. The twins accept. Harry, using James Potter's invisibility cloak, vanishes. Outmaneuvered and outsmarted, Fred and George honour the agreement and reluctantly hand over the Marauder's map. Activating the parchment alone, Harry tracks his own name, Hermione's, Snape's, and even Dumbledore's. Then his eyes lock onto a label, Peter Pettigrew. Refraining from impulsive action, he takes the map straight to the dungeons. Harry lays the parchment upon Snape's desk and points to the moving name, Peter Pettigrew. The potion's master's composure shatters as he reads the name, his reaction carrying a dark resentment that it was not Sirius Black that betrayed Lily, but Peter Pettigrew. Recognizing the tracking magic, Snape agrees to help locate Pettigrew. Using the map, Harry tracks down Sirius along the grounds, and together they corner Pettigrew as a rat, forcing him back into human shape and preparing to hand him over to the Ministry. Before they can move, Snape steps out of the darkness. The instant his eyes land on the architect of Lily Potter's murder, 13 years of calculated restraint collapse. Bypassing every tactical rule he taught the boy, Snape raises his wand and incinerates Pettigrew with lethal magic before Harry or Sirius can intervene. With Pettigrew's body destroyed, Sirius stares at Snape with hatred, convinced the potion's master murdered the witness to ensure he remains a condemned fugitive. Sirius escapes as a hunted man. Only Snape knows the reality. He lost control. Sitting alone in his office afterward, the potion's master is haunted. The cold handler unravelled over the memory of Lily Potter, while the unfeeling weapon he created stood in the shadows, silently watching his creator fracture. When Harry Potter's name erupts from the flames of the Goblet of Fire, he registers the event merely as a tactical problem requiring immediate resolution. He approaches the tournament with mechanical efficiency, completely stripping away the theatrics of his fellow champions. He neutralizes a Hungarian horntail in the first task with a single surgical disorientating spell, and breaches the surface of the Black Lake in the second task long before his competitors. To Harry, the upcoming Yule Ball represents an irrelevant, non-strategic distraction from his training. Yet as a champion, attendance remains compulsory. Observing his peers pair off in frantic social maneuvers, he confronts an unexpected operational failure. Snape's rigorous curriculum taught him to read an opponent's micro-expressions from 20 paces, but provided zero instruction in social negotiation. Recognizing his limitation, he walks into the quiet library and approaches Hermione directly, requesting her attendance at the dance with flat, clinical bluntness. Hermione blinks in astonishment before breaking into an incredulous laugh, noting the absolute absurdity of his approach before finally accepting the offer. On the night of the event, Harry waits near the Great Hall as Hermione descends the marble staircase. For the first time in 4 years, he looks at her and sees something beyond the intellectual peer or a strategic asset. Unequipped by his guardian's conditioning for the unfamiliar feelings stirring behind his mental shields. Their dance begins with rigid formality, but gradually softens into a neutral rhythm. When a predatory Rita Skeeter approaches to extract sensationalist quotes, Hermione steps in front of Harry, wielding a protective wit that thoroughly dismisses the journalist before she can strike. As Skeeter retreats, Hermione turns back to Harry and offers a dry joke at the reporter's expense. For the first time in his conscious memory, Harry laughs, Hermione's hand remaining intertwined with his as they share the quiet moment. From across the hall, Snape stands in the shadows, his jaw locked tight. He does not see a student enjoying a dance. He sees the weapon he forged developing human attachments. Haunted by the sight of Lily's green eyes, laughing with someone who is not him. The following morning, Snape summons the boy to his office, opening the confrontation by targeting Hermione directly and branding the girl a dangerous emotional distraction. Harry holds his mentor's gaze with the unblinking discipline Snape taught him, reminding the potions master that he was trained to identify threats, and the girl does not qualify. Snape fixes him with an icy glare, reminding the boy that he was trained to protect the overarching mission, and he is rapidly losing sight of the objective. Harry turns and exits the room without another word, leaving Snape sitting in isolation. The weapon has talked back, and worse, Snape is terrified that the boy might be right. When the third task commences, Harry enters the towering hedges of the maze with cold, singular focus. He navigates the dark labyrinth with ease, bypassing magical obstacles, detecting hidden wards, and systematically outthinking the maze's architecture. Reaching the centre entirely alone, he sees the glowing Triwizard Cup resting on its pedestal. Closing his hand around the handle without a moment of hesitation. The instant the portkey magic pulls him through space, he lands hard in a dark overground graveyard. Before he can catalogue his surroundings, Barty Crouch Jr. stuns him and he loses consciousness. Barty Crouch completes the gruesome ritual, and Lord Voldemort rises from the vapour in a fully restored, terrifying body. The Dark Lord turns his slit-pupilled eyes onto the boy, mockingly acknowledging the legendary status of the child who survived before declaring that the boy's life ends tonight, and handing Harry his wand. Harry offers no dramatic response, refusing to engage in childish taunts. He simply takes his wand and fights. Though outmatched by the Dark Lord's vast magical mastery, Harry's response is fast, surgical, and deeply unpredictable. Snape raised him specifically to survive against a vastly superior opponent, and Harry executes that training flawlessly. No wasted motion, no emotional openings, and no fear for Voldemort to exploit. The Dark Lord becomes genuinely fascinated, realizing this is not a frightened child, but a lethal instrument forged in darkness. Recognizing he cannot defeat Voldemort in a direct duel of attrition, Harry creates a sudden, explosive tactical diversion, executing a tight shield spell before lunging directly for the Triwizard Cup, escaping entirely under his own power. He crashes back onto the grass at the edge of the maze, bloodied, battered, and disorientated, but firmly gripping the cup in his hand. The sudden return and blood plunges the spectator stands into utter confusion. Hermione breaks through the crowd, reaching him first and pressing a trembling hand against his arm as she desperately asks what happened. Snape materializes immediately behind her, his dark eyes rapidly scanning the boy to catalogue every injury, his face revealing an undeniable flash of sheer relief before his stoic mask snaps back into place. Looking up at the girl beside him and then at his handler, Harry delivers the report that Lord Voldemort has returned. Hermione's grip on his arm tightens in absolute terror, while Snape stands completely frozen in the dark. Harry is summoned to the headmaster's office late in the evening in his 5th year. Harry ascends the spiral staircase to find Severus Snape already standing silent and watchful in the shadows. To Harry's quiet surprise, Hermione Granger sits before the desk, having been personally invited by Dumbledore. Neither student understands the strategic rationale behind her inclusion in such a high-level briefing, and the headmaster offers no immediate explanation, allowing an uneasy tension to settle over the room while Snape remains completely detached near the perimeter. Dumbledore introduces the nightmare mechanics of Horcruxes, placing a ruined ink-stained diary onto the desk. The headmaster reveals that during Harry's second year, a possessed first-year student had nearly died under the artifact's influence, a crisis Dumbledore kept entirely concealed at the time. While Hermione registers the profound horror of a split human soul, Harry displays almost zero emotional reaction. He absorbs the revelation with analytical detachment, treating the ultimate dark magic not as a terrifying atrocity, but as a simple inventory of targets that must be systematically located and destroyed. Disturbed by his total lack of revulsion, Hermione quietly asks if he truly comprehends the sickening nature of what Dumbledore is describing, stunned that he can process the soul's mutilation like a routine checklist. Harry offers no room for debate, his focus remaining entirely on operational efficiency. Turning to how the secret was uncovered, Dumbledore explains that confirming the existence and nature of these soul fragments required intelligence from a reluctant former professor who refused to speak. The headmaster casts a sharp scowl towards Snape, revealing that the potions master forcefully extracted the vital information from the old man's mind without authorization. Snape remains completely unbothered, offering unapologetic silence. Once the students are dismissed, Snape remains in the quiet room. Dumbledore studies his potions master, noting his total silence during the briefing and pressing him on the unnerving reality of what Harry has become. The headmaster confronts Snape with the unsettling truth that the boy feels no natural human dread, openly questioning if Snape is even capable of recognizing the terrifying hollow weapon he has created. Refusing to defend his design or acknowledge the warning, Snape turns on his heel and sweeps out of the office, leaving Dumbledore alone in the oppressive stillness. Albus Dumbledore grants Harry and Hermione direct access to his private basin of memories, unlocking a chronological archive of Tom Riddle's past stored within glass vials. The headmaster deliberately excludes Severus Snape from these sessions, framing the investigation as a covert intelligence task reserved for the two students. While Hermione approaches the pensive like the most critical research project of her life, Harry treats the glowing memories as a tactical debriefing, analysing Riddle's movement, micro-expressions, and psychological vulnerabilities with military focus. Over the following weeks, Harry and Hermione become a two-person investigative unit. They trace Riddle's timeline, the orphanage, Hogwarts, Borgin and Burke's, Hezbollah Smith. They identify the Founder's objects. They triangulate the cave. Harry and Hermione present their final intelligence reports to the headmaster. Dumbledore listens intently, validating their precise deduction and confirming that their analytical work is complete. When Harry quietly requests to join the extraction operation, Dumbledore firmly denies permission. Though every strategy instinct pushes Harry to execute the mission himself, his intense conditioning allows him to exercise disciplined patience, accepting the order without outburst. Exiting the headmaster's office into the stone corridor, Harry and Hermione process the unspoken details of the meeting. Neither can ignore the withered curse consuming Dumbledore's right hand, nor the calculated air of secrecy lingering over his instructions. In his 6th year, the shadow of war fully engulfs Hogwarts. Dumbledore returns from the seaside cave, revealing that while the locket had already been removed from the cavern, he successfully tracked its location and ensured its destruction. However, the black necrotic curse from the Gaunt Ring, which Harry and Hermione had spotted months prior, has violently accelerated past the point of magical containment. Despite Snape's relentless efforts to slow the poison, the headmaster is rapidly dying. Harry receives an urgent summons to the office, fully aware that the leader of the Order has mere moments remaining. Entering the quiet chamber, Harry finds Dumbledore weak but lucid, sitting alone in the shadows. The headmaster speaks softly of the impending conflict and the final remaining soul fragment tethering Voldemort to life, the snake Nagini. Pausing, Dumbledore reaches for the wooden wand resting beside him, the Elder Wand. Holding the ancient artifact up into the low light, he reveals its true identity as the most formidable wand in magical history, a relic that corrupted every sorcerer who sought it. Harry listens in absolute silence, expecting this legendary instrument to be passed down as the ultimate weapon for his own engineered purpose. Dumbledore fixes his fading eyes upon the boy, then using the very last reserve of his strength, he snaps the Elder Wand violently in two. The crack echoes through the silent chamber, leaving Harry stunned behind his defences. Dumbledore delivers his final lesson with fading breath, telling the boy that Voldemort cannot be conquered through raw force, superior spellwork, or ultimate weapons, but only through the unyielding power of love. Dumbledore refuses to pass that destructive legacy onto the child. With his final act complete, the headmaster sinks back into his chair and dies. Exiting the office, Harry steps into the stone corridor to find Severus Snape waiting in the shadows. His handler asks for no emotional details and offers zero comfort, treating Dumbledore's demise as an anticipated variable within their strategic calculations. Snape immediately delivers a tactical update. With the other fragments eliminated, all Horcruxes are officially accounted for. Only Nagini remains, kept under Voldemort's direct personal protection. Snape outlines the final operational steps. Kill the Serpent, then eliminate the Dark Lord himself, ending the war together. Harry keeps Dumbledore's final words and the shattered piece of the legend entirely to himself. Revealing nothing to his handler, he simply offers a disciplined nod, turning to walk alongside Snape down the torch-lit corridor. He moves in quiet reflection, caught directly between two incompatible worldviews: Dumbledore's belief in humanity and love, and Snape's unyielding need for revenge. Positioned between the man who tried to preserve his soul and the mentor who forged him into an instrument of death, Harry steps into the final phase of the war, carrying the weight of both. News of Dumbledore's death reaches Voldemort within hours, and the response is absolute. The Ministry of Magic falls in a swift, coordinated strike before dawn, and by morning, a massive army of Death Eaters surrounds Hogwarts. As the siege begins, students, teachers, and Order members take up defensive positions along the castle's perimeter. The long-feared war is no longer a distant threat. It has arrived at their gates. On the front lines of the breach, Harry Potter moves with mechanical precision. He fights exactly as Snape trained him, cold and devastating. Every curse finds its target without wasted movement. Standing directly at his side, Hermione Granger does not attempt to match his raw destructive output. Instead, systematically covering his blind spots, calling out incoming target vectors, and keeping him anchored to the human defenders around them. Death Eaters throw their full force at the breach point, but fail to break through. And as the line holds, a fierce chant ripples through the defenders. They are chanting for Harry. To Harry's left, Severus Snape positions himself on the boy's weak flank, a strategic formation they spent a decade drilling in the subterranean exercise room. Harry never turns to check his rear. He doesn't need to. Snape has filled that exact space since his childhood. The unit operates with terrifying fluid symmetry. Harry advances and destroys. Hermione coordinates defenses and shields, and Snape methodically eliminates any high-level threat before it can reach his weapon. The tactical design Snape engineered over 17 years reaches its pinnacle, holding the line against impossible odds. Then, Voldemort personally steps onto the battlefield. The temperature drops, and a suffocating quiet halts the surrounding crossfire. Offering no monologues or terms of surrender, the Dark Lord locks eyes with the boy, and the duel erupts. Spells collide. Harry holds his ground against Voldemort's vast mastery, not breaking, waiting for Snape to execute the precise tactical flank maneuver they planned for this exact encounter. In that critical second, Snape spots Nagini slithering along the perimeter, momentarily separated from Voldemort's protective ward. A window of vulnerability opens that will vanish in seconds. Overridden by an ancient, unreasoning hatred older than any strategy, the raw desire to annihilate the final vessel of the monster that stole Lily, Snape breaks rank. He turns away from the duel to pursue the Serpent. Years of continuous drilling, years of absolute tactical trust, and the fundamental promise to protect the weapon's weak side collapse in a single heartbeat. Harry feels the left flank vanish. He turns his head and sees Snape's back moving away in pursuit of the snake. There is no silent operational signal, no tactical understanding. In a fraction of a second, Harry realizes the unvarnished truth in his very bones. He chose the kill over me. Voldemort instantly exploits the abandoned flank. A blinding jet of green light, the shade meant for Harry as an infant, strikes him square in the chest. In that very same instant, a roaring torrent of Snape's fiend fire engulfs and incinerates Nagini. The final Horcrux perishes in the flames. As Harry falls from the killing curse, Voldemort also collapses to his knees, shorn of his immortality at last. Shaken by the sudden destruction of Nagini and the Dark Lord's collapse, the Death Eaters execute a chaotic retreat from the breach. A ragged, heavy silence falls over the battlefield. The defenders drag Harry's still body back behind the castle's inner lines, the triumphant chants instantly dissolving into a horrified, breathless hush. Hermione drops to her knees beside him, weeping hysterically, her voice calling his name echoing through the quiet stone court. The weapon is dead. The boy she has been stubbornly teaching to be a human is gone. Snape walks through the parted crowd, his face a total mask of unyielding stone. Being so close to accomplish his life's objective, he stops directly over the boy's body, looking down at the weapon he forged, Lily's son, taken from the ruins of Godric Hollow and raised in shadow for this single moment. 17 years of absolute discipline hold his expression steady against the rising tide of internal ruin. But before the self-loathing can consume him, he sees it, a single tear forming at the center of Harry's eye. Snape's stone expression does not shatter, but his hand moves with practiced clinical efficiency. Drawing a small glass vial, he catches the drop of liquid in a motion so fast and silent that no one around him registers the act. He offers no words, no explanations, and no comfort. Leaving Hermione weeping over the body and ignoring the staring defenders, Snape turns his back on the battlefield and walks silently towards the castle, heading to the Pensieve with the first non-tactical truth he has collected in 17 years. Crossing the threshold into his private chambers, Snape does not pause to steady his trembling frame. Holding the vial containing Harry's tear, he moves directly to the Pensieve. Uncapping the glass, he pours the liquid onto the silver surface, where it spreads through the swirling mist like ink. Without a second of hesitation, Snape plunges his face into the basin, and the world falls away. He lands in Spinner's End. Harry sits in his room shortly after receiving a visit from Hagrid. The half-giant had weeping tears as he pressed a leather-bound photo album into the boy's hand. Pictures of James and Lily Potter waving, smiling and alive. Harry's face breaks open with unguarded joy, looking at his mother with an expression of profound wonder. Then, Memory Snape steps into the doorway, cold and clinical. He snatches the album away, branding it an unacceptable distraction. Harry does not cry. He was already learning to suppress his tears, but the light behind his eyes extinguishes. The scene dissolves into a quieter memory. Night at Spinner's End. Harry sits on his bed in the moonlight, sliding his hand beneath his pillow to withdraw a single hidden photograph of Lily, a slip of paper he had secretly tucked up his sleeve before the album was confiscated. A tiny act of defiance, a smaller act of love. The 7-year-old studies his mother's face with a painful mixture of longing and confusion, trying to comprehend the love he lost. Watching from the dark corner, the present-day Snape feels the first crack in his armor. The memories accelerate into a dizzying sequence. Harry, at 8 years old, successfully brewing a complex potion, beams up at his teacher with the smile Lily used to wear. Before the boy can speak, Memory Snape's voice cuts through the room, declaring the achievement merely acceptable and ordering the next sequence. The child's smile vanishes, his face closing like a door. Snape watches himself snuff out the inner spark across the years, while the boy simply absorbs every emotional blow and pushes himself harder to please his master. The vision shifts to the Hogwarts library late at night. 12-year-old Harry sits across from Hermione Granger. She leans over a shared tomb and offers a dry, quiet joke. Harry breaks into a real, unforced laugh, surprised out of his conditioning, bright and completely uncalculated. His posture relaxes, looking at the girl with something Snape never offered him, total ease and safety. The memory turns to the Yule Ball. 14-year-old Harry spins Hermione across the floor long after the crowd has thinned. She stumbles and he catches her, both of them laughing freely. They are children, happy, and Snape realizes he has never seen Harry look so alive. Then comes the severance, Snape branding Hermione a liability, Harry's spirit retreating to a cold place Snape can no longer reach. The final memory materializes in Dumbledore's office during late Year 6. Harry sits across from the headmaster, listening as Dumbledore softly reveals the horror, that a fragment of Voldemort's soul resides inside him. And when the other Horcruxes are destroyed, Harry must die. Harry absorbs the death sentence without flinching or weeping. Pausing, he quietly asks if Snape is aware of this fate. When Dumbledore confirms that Snape does not know, Harry insists it must stay that way. Recognizing the profound unspoken damage his mentor carries, Harry refuses to add to his burden. In a soft, unwavering admission, the weapon Snape forged confesses that despite the coldness and the cruelty, he loves the broken man. He views him as a father. The realization strikes Snape like a physical blow. He violently recoils from the pensive, gasping for air, before desperately plunging back into the basin. The memory is ending. Dumbledore sits in stunned silence as Harry stands and walks out the door, leaving Snape alone in the memory of the empty office, haunted by the declaration of a child he raised in darkness. The pensive ejects him, leaving Snape collapsed on his knees on the cold stone floor. Yet the weapon loved him anyway. The weapon called him father. In the suffocating silence of his chambers, Snape realizes the terrifying truth. 17 years he believed he honored Lily. She died so her son might know love. Snape ensured he lived in emotional starvation. Snape does not weep, but his hands tremble uncontrollably over the empty glass vial resting on his desk. Somewhere within the stone walls of the castle, Harry's body lies cold beneath a sheet. Hermione sits weeping over his still form, and the boy who loved Snape like a father died believing his creator chose vengeance over his life. Because in the critical second on the battlefield, Snape did. And now, alone in the dark, he is left to carry the ruin of what he chose. Hermione remains on her knees beside Harry's motionless body, surrounded by defenders standing in a quiet, solemn ring. The lingering triumph of holding the castle has completely vanished, replaced only by the ragged, desperate sound of her breathing. Snape has been gone for what feels like an eternity, but she neither knows nor cares where he went. The boy she spent years trying to reach lies cold on the stone. Then beneath her trembling palm, she registers a faint movement, a shallow rise of his chest. A sudden breathless quiet falls over the surrounded crowd before someone gasps. Hermione's hand flies to his face as Harry's eyes snap open, impossibly green, blinking up at the grey sky like a man awakened from a void. Rising to his feet in silence, he ignores the hands reaching out toward him and the disbelieving voices calling his name. The crowd parts as he walks out of the defensive perimeter alone. Hermione watches him walk into the gloom, making no move to stop him, recognizing that this final march belongs solely to him. Harry steps into the scorched no-man's land between the castle and the tree line. On the far side, Lord Voldemort has risen from his earlier collapse, weakened but standing amidst his remaining army. Mid-command, the Dark Lord abruptly freezes. The Death Eaters turn to see the boy who took 2 killing curses, and still continuing to advance. A sudden wave of panic grips the dark ranks, followed by cracking pops of figures disapparating into the night. Voldemort turns in furious disbelief, shouting at his forces to stand their ground, his voice cracking on the command. They do not stand. Unbothered by the fleeing army, Harry maintains a fixated gaze on the Dark Lord alone. Voldemort's face hardens into pure fury as he raises his wand, mirrored instantly by Harry. 2 voices speak the incantation simultaneously, and 2 jets of green light collide in the center of the battlefield, triggering an explosion of energy. Bound by the light, the balance shifts. Harry's focus drives Voldemort's curse back towards its source. The weapon has locked onto its ultimate target. Suddenly, a red curse strikes Harry from his right flank. Bellatrix Lestrange stands at the edge of the line, her wand extended with unhinged malice. Harry hits the earth hard as his spell breaks, leaving Voldemort freed and erasing his wand for the execution blow. Before the Dark Lord's curse can strike the boy, a jet of green light intercepts it mid-flight. Severus Snape steps from the shadows, locking wands directly with Voldemort. Their eyes meet in a furious deadlock, but Snape's curse rapidly begins to yield against the Dark Lord's raw power. Realizing he cannot win the direct duel of strength, Snape glances sideways and sees Bellatrix advancing on Harry's fallen defenseless form, raising her wand for a final strike. In a single heartbeat, Snape calculates the only tactical outcome that keeps the boy alive. Severus Snape cuts his spell lock, turning his back entirely to Voldemort. He fires a single killing curse at Bellatrix. The spell strikes her square in the chest, dropping her dead before her body hits the ground. But with his defense abandoned, Snape cannot recover. Voldemort launches a vicious cutting hex across Snape's exposed chest. Blood spouts, and the potion's master drops to his knees. Surging to his feet, Harry registers the sacrifice. Before Voldemort can turn back, Harry fires his curse into the Dark Lord's chest. Voldemort's body flakes apart, not into ash or dust, but into a million splintered fragments of a ruined soul, scattering into the night air. The Dark Lord is gone. Harry does not linger to watch the disintegration. He is already sprinting across the field. He reaches Snape just as his handler's body slumps forward, catching him and lowering him gently to the stone. Blood pours from the wound in Snape's chest, staining Harry's hands crimson. Snape's dark eyes lock onto Harry's green ones, no longer searching for Lily's shadow, but looking truly at the boy before him. Snape whispers, "You were my son." His trembling hand reaches up towards Harry's face before falling limp to the earth. Harry remains silent, carrying a weight for which no words exist. He reaches down, gently closes Snape's eyes, and lowers his head to the stone. As the defenders and Hermione watch from the edge of the battlefield, Harry stays on his knees beside the body of the man who raised him in the darkness, and who chose protection over his own life in the end. A year after the battle, morning light fills a modest cottage kitchen. Harry Potter makes tea by hand, the slow ritual filling the quiet. Hermione enters with research notes under her arm. They work together now, far from the public eye, curse-breaking and magical forensics, two minds in wordless synchronization. When Harry looks up, his face softens into a real smile, unguarded, reaching his eyes. On the mantel, a framed photograph, Harry and Hermione side by side, mid-laugh. The same laugh she surprised out of him at the Yule Ball when they were 14, now fully returned. Lily's photograph rests elsewhere, buried with Snape in the grave Harry chose at the edge of the Forbidden Forest, placed on his chest before the first soil fell. A mother and a father together in the only way they ever could be. Late that afternoon, Harry walks alone to the grave. He stands over the earth for a long time, the silence around him no longer empty, but full. Speaking into the quiet air for the first time since the battle, he offers Snape a final honest reckoning. He acknowledges that he has finally outgrown the cold, unfeeling weapon he was forged to be, yet he accepts that he owes his resilience to the man who made him. He carries every harsh memory of the relentless training and the bitter isolation, but weighs them all against the undeniable truth that in the final moment, his mentor chose him over revenge. He touches the earth once and turns toward the cottage. Hermione falls into step beside him at the gate, and they walk back toward the warm light, together. Harry Potter was forged as a weapon by a man who had forgotten how to love. He was taught to destroy, trained to feel nothing, yet through a hidden photograph, a girl who refused to let him retreat into the cold, and the stubborn machinery of his own heart, he learned what no one had ever taught him. Love had been waiting all along for him to choose it, and in the end, he did. I hope you've enjoyed this What If. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.